Hey guys, welcome back to Finance and Firefighters with Warren P. Today we're going to talk about debt. So, a quick stat is the average debt for a American with credit card debt is about $6,500, and the average percentage for somebody who carries debt is almost 22%. It's like 21.91%. So, if you look at just making minimum payments on a $6,500 credit card balance, you would take 7 years and 3 months to pay that off. And you'd pay almost an additional $6,400 just to pay off the credit card debt with the minimum balance. So it's set up in a way that the credit card companies want to make money off of you. And if you are constantly carrying on that debt, they love you as a customer because they're constantly making money from you. So if we look at that in contrast about what you'd be paying in the $150 a minimum payment, let's say that was your $150 a month payment to pay off that balance of $6,500 on a credit card, you would pay that amount, and then you'd also pay almost $6,500 in interest for paying it back. If you took that $150 and you just that small amount, and you had started with zero balance, and you invested that at a 7% rate of return, you'd end up with over $15,000 after that same 7-year period with a 7% rate of return. So differences of, hey, I'm gonna basically pay off $12,000 worth of debt, and I've really only used $6,500 to buy what I wanted, versus, hey, if I took that same amount and was doing it on a monthly basis and just invested it, I'd have about $15,000 that I could have cash right now to pay for whatever I wanted. So just an example of really what you can do with the debt versus paying it off or having it as an investment vehicle instead of debt. So two different classifications for debt are secured and unsecured debt. For secured debt, the debt is based on the asset that you're using to purchase as collateral. So if we take an example of a vehicle, so if you got a loan for a vehicle and you're going to be paying that back, that'd be a secured debt, because if you didn't make payments on that, the lender could take the vehicle to basically recoup some of their costs. So typically for a secured debt, the interest rates tend to be lower because it's a lower risk for them. They have something physical that they can take back. For unsecured debt, there's no collateral in there. It's basically a contractual agreement between you and the lender. And these types of debt typically have higher interest rates because it's more risky to the lender. So for the unsecured debt, the lender basically could take you to court to reclaim some of their costs, some or all of their costs. But again, it's riskier, and it's going to take time and resources for them to do that. Debt can also be categorized as revolving or installment based. So for revolving based, we think of this more as a credit card. You have a certain credit limit that you're able to achieve, and you're basically able to get up to that limit, pay it down, and keep hitting that limit as many times as you want. It's open-ended. In that case, you basically have any debt that you carry over that you haven't paid off. The next payment amount you'll have for the following month will be based on that amount with the interest carried over the next payment cycle. For installment-based debt, this is typically a fixed period of time for a fixed interest rate, and there's a culmination of when that ends. This is stuff that we'd see at your mortgage or your vehicles, things like that, for an installment-based debt. For installment-based debt, it tends to be the lender gives you a chunk of money in a lump sum, and then there's agreed upon time and agreed upon fee schedule for you to pay that back to them. It's closed-ended. Some different categories of debt are also fixed rate versus variable rate interest rate. So most of the things we're used to on the fixed rate side is you have a certain mortgage with a certain percentage rate over a certain period of time. This is the standard thing that most folks set up their mortgages with. A variable interest rate is something that is much more risky, and this was used significantly after the housing market crashed in 2008. A lot of folks had variable interest rate loans where they would pay a smaller amount in the beginning, interest only, and then as the interest rate increased, their payments increased. So the downside about a variable interest rate is you don't know what your payments are going to be in the future. It's possible that they're lower, but more often than not, they tend to be higher. And when the bill comes due, your interest is significantly more and the payments are significantly more. That's what resulted in a lot of folks losing their homes during that period of time. Now we'll look at some examples of what it actually costs you to leverage debt. So we'll look at some different examples. Can include things like a house, vehicle, student loans, HELOC, things like that and credit cards for paying off that debt. So what I'm getting for it now when I'm leveraging debt to pay for something I can't actually afford, what that will actually cost you in the long run.
A large purchase of $5,000, and say you weren't able to get that money within a year, if your interest rate was 18%, you'd pay an additional $500 on top of it in interest just to get the instantaneous gratification of using the $5,000 today. Purchase a vehicle for $50,000, you get a 5-year term, and you put $10,000 down, add in your sales tax, your registration fees, title, things like that, and you get a 5% interest rate on it. The total amount the vehicle would cost you would actually be $61,000, and the total interest would be a little over $5,000. So a $50,000 vehicle costing you over $60,000. If you had $40,000 in student loan, you're going to pay it off in 10 years with a 6.8% interest rate. You'd end up paying an additional $15,000 in interest by paying $460 a month payments for that 10-year period. So total amount for a $40,000 loan would actually cost you $55,000. Here's an example of purchasing a home for $500,000 with 20% down. Loan amount is $400,000. Interest rate is about 6.5% for a 30-year fixed term. The total amount of interest you'd pay is over $500,000, making the cost of the home over $1 million.
After looking at the cost of what debt will actually cost you when you're leveraging it, we could also look at those same examples paralleled to investment vehicle for it, right? So if we look at what the loss of spendable income is as a result of getting things paid off via debt, we could really look at the significant differences between pay now or pay later or pay now, saving money, pay with cash. Those two different perspectives on things, and what things will actually cost you when you're looking at using debt to leverage something you want right now.
Investing $458.40 a month for an entire year at a 7% rate of return. So instead of using this as a credit card payment, if we invested this, the end balance would be about almost $5,500 at the end of a year. Instead of purchasing a car on credit, we invest that amount of money, $754.85 over a 5-year period, 7% rate of return. You'd end up having $52,000 after just putting that money down after the investment. $32 over a 10-year period to purchase student loans instead of using credit to do so. 7% rate of return. You'd end up with $76,000 for college instead of using that for student loans.
A good rule of thumb as far as carrying your amount of debt is anything with a 5 to 6% interest rate, it's typically better to attempt to pay those things off as fast as possible. And the reason for this is that most relatively safe or predictable investment vehicles, you're sort of, when you get into that 5 to 6% rate, you're approaching the amount you'd be able to recuperate by just investing that amount of money. So if you have loans in excess of 5 to 6%, it may be a good idea to start paying that stuff off quickly so that you can free that money up to use it as an investment vehicle versus doing them at the same time, trying to invest while still carrying this debt with a high percentage rate. You're sort of working against each other. Now we'll look at some different examples of debt payoff strategies. One of the best places to start as far as determining how to pay off debt is to determine really how much debt that you have. So you can look at this to say what your debt ratio is, and that basically is your net income and the percentage of debt that you have that goes to paying that off every month. So let's say that you take home $4,000 a month. If you have more than $2,000 a month that you're paying towards debt, now you're starting to get into that much higher risk state, and you may actually want to seek professional help to be able to pay that debt off. They have debt relief programs or specific companies that can help you consolidate some of that debt so that you can actually get to a place where you can pay it off. Once you're going over that 50% debt ratio, you're going to have a much more difficult time tackling that debt than you would if it was below that threshold. So one strategy for paying off debt is called the debt snowball. And in the debt snowball, you list all the debt that you have in quantity. So if you have $10,000 in credit card debt, you've got $20,000 for a vehicle, you've got $50,000 for a secondary mortgage or a HELOC that you have, and then you have $200,000 for debt in your mortgage. The debt snowball is basically starting with, regardless of the percentages that you have, you start with the smallest amount that you have to pay off first. So in this case, you pay off the credit card debt first. You work towards paying that off. Once that's paid off, then you work down to the next one, paying the vehicle off. Then you work down to the next one, paying the secondary mortgage, then the house, that kind of thing. So if you do that, it basically starts as a small amount you're paying off, which is more reasonable or realistic for you to do so. So paying that off and focusing on and making minimum payments towards the other ones. Once that's paid off, now you free up that money and you use that to pay off number two. And once number two is paid off, you use that to free up and pay off number three. And by doing that, that it's called the snowball method because as you're doing it, the amount that you're able to work towards paying things off is growing substantially until it's basically like a big snowball rolling down the hill to where you're able to actually pay off some of that higher debt first. So the reason a lot of folks like this is because they're actually seeing positive results. If they see 4 things on their list they have to pay off and they've paid off 1 or 2 of them, they're like, hey, I'm approaching getting there, even if the quantities are less. So there's a psychological piece that is really effective for some folks paying off debt in that way. Debt, or another strategy for paying off debt, would be the debt avalanche or debt wrecking ball is what it is called. And in that case, you are organizing the debt that you have based on percentages. So the highest rate first, the second highest rate number 2, third highest rate number 3, and so on and so forth. And you start that way by paying the minimum payments towards everything, and then the one with the highest interest rate, you start paying that as fast as possible with as much as you have. And then once that's freed up, you're basically working the same way. Take the amount of money you're paying towards that, put a number 2. As you do that, you're gonna. It may take longer over a longer period of time to hit that. If you're starting with a large amount like the mortgage, you're not going to be chipping away at the checklist as far. But because they are the highest interest rates first, you are going to be the most efficient with it. By paying off the highest interest rate ones first, you will free up the money and you will not be, basically working against, gravity as you're trying to push a boulder uphill. You'll basically be working towards, once some of those higher ones are paid off, it's going to become that much easier to pay off the lower interest ones after that. Plus, it's more efficient. And once that's freed up, now you're getting to the point where if you're below that 5 to 6% threshold of debt, now you can actually focus on investing some of the money once you've had some of those victories about paying off some of that debt. Debt consolidation is also a very effective way at reducing your debt. So if you have several different debt in several different areas, you can consolidate into that one area, possibly with even a lower interest rate. Let's say you have multiple credit cards. If you do something like that, either on your own, if the credit card companies are flexible for you, or if you use a company to help you consolidate some of these things, by reducing the percentages you're paying on that stuff, you will be able to effectively pay off that debt much faster than you would if you had multiple different areas you were trying to attack. Once the debt's paid off, and you've really worked towards changing some of your strategies and how you've actually done this, it'd be good to start putting into some things into place that'll help you reduce the likelihood of that happening again. So possibly this is getting rid of a few of your credit cards, keeping them out of your reach, setting limits for yourself. Even if your credit limit is higher than this, say that you have a $10,000 credit limit, but that got you into trouble last time, maybe you lower that down to $1,000 or $2,000 before you pay the debt off. Or you start using some strategies like the cash in the envelope method, or paying off your bills every 2 weeks. Every time a bill is due for the 2 weeks, you pay it off. That way you're not carrying a balance over in your credit card that's adding more debt to your plate that exponentially grows and puts you into trouble. So once the debt's paid off, it would also be good to rework your budget into the 50-30-20 split. So once everything else is taken care of, now you can get into that really healthy zone of the 50-30-20 split. If you look at episode 7, we dive into exactly how to work into that between your budget itself in episode 6, and then budget strategies in episode 7. You can work towards now really, instead of being crushed by debt, you're working towards actually building your wealth after you've already taken care of all the debt side of it. Thanks for joining me on Finance for Firefighters. Appreciate your time. As always, if you have comments, leave them below. Give me a thumbs up if you like it. I'll see you guys in the next one.